One morning when I woke up, the word Peru came into my ears 4 times like a whisper, and I thought, what's in Peru? Oh, Machu Picchu's in Peru. So I just decided to visit Peru, and I was just in shock at the megalithic structures and the lack of much knowledge about them, the really stilted way that academia looks at this stuff. And so I took it on as my goal to unravel the mysteries of megalithic sites like that. And also that's when I stumbled across the elongated skulls. Akhenaten decided was important in the art of his time period. His daughters are all displayed with very elongated heads. What Akhenaten was trying to say is that this is what our ancestors looked like. I am from the royal bloodline. I descend from the divine. He was very much an adept of the mystery schools of ancient Egypt. And he wanted to bring back an ancient time period called the time of Aten, the period of full-blown consciousness. Ignore the idea that these were constructed as tombs. So then you start to ponder, what would the function be? And that's where we get into vibration and resonance. There's a huge system of tunnels underneath the Giza Plateau that most people don't know about. The pyramids are the external features of these energetic places. We believe that water was running underground from the Nile, setting up vibration, and that the pyramid's function was to amplify that vibration. My own personal theory is that it didn't have anything to do with electricity or energy in that way. It was more to set up an energetic field. The obelisks, which also were not made by the dynastic people, were set up in strategic locations, and they were the receivers of the energy. I think it was used for consciousness. I think whoever built them, honestly, I don't think they felt comfortable in the environment that we find quite harmonious, which is this planet. And I think they built this energetic field in order to be able to access that which was not available to them in the area. So I am implying ancient aliens at this point. The more I study Egypt, the more I have to personally believe that these constructions like that were not done by Atlanteans or anyone. I think they were from off-world people who, in order to be able to function properly, had to have this energetic field set up in order to access their highest state of consciousness. The acoustics are just phenomenal. They react to the sound of Om. That's the only sound they like. If you hit Om, the whole box amplifies the sound. The vibration goes right through you, and you were automatically in an alternate state of consciousness. Chuck's theory is that there were eruptions of solar plasma from the sun about 12,000 years ago, and this caused the end of the last ice age, which, according to him, took place in less than 2 weeks, like the melting of the vast amount of the ice sheet of the north. That happened at a super rapid pace as the result of the solar plasma vaporizing the ice and then having it come down as rain. And that's when you get into the biblical flood of 40 days and 40 nights. Sea level rose by 100 meters very rapidly. That's the end of Atlantis. Well, in terms of the technology, that's what a lot of people are pursuing right now. They're looking at zero-point energy. They're looking at free energy, and I think that's what these things used to do. So that, I think, is bringing what had been invented in the past back to life again, because all of these structures seem to function in a very harmonious way. They didn't use gasoline or natural gas or anything. It was the vibration of the earth that produced the energy. So that's perfectly in harmony with the planet. And that's why the proportions had to be based on sacred geometry. It's a renaissance of good principles from the past that must be nurtured and enhanced and brought back for the better good of humanity. My role in life is to learn and disseminate knowledge that I encounter. I came to this world to do this, and that gives me an incredible sense of contentment. Those who think they have control are rapidly losing their power, which is wonderful. We've been lied to through the education system and through governmental systems as to the greatness of who we are and the greatness of where we came from. And as the old systems start to collapse, such as the banking system, some organized religion, government as we know it, and history as we've been taught, we are entering a very rapid phase of growth, of self-empowerment, and hopefully the unity of humanity. And that's a wonderful thing because we have little time in order to be able to be on this planet and little time to save our planet from what is being done to it. And so I think we stand a good chance of surviving and thriving by remembering where we came from.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Truth, Health, Freedom podcast. Today's guest is tour guide, author, and expert in ancient history, Brien Foerster. Brien Foerster was born in Rochester, Minnesota, USA, but grew up on the west coast of Canada. After 15 years living in Peru, he is now a well-known authority on the ancient megalithic works of South America and the perplexing ancient elongated skulls of the area. As founder and tour guide with Hidden Inca Tours, Brien leads groups exploring the ancient sites and native wisdom of Peru, Bolivia, Mexico, India, and Egypt. He now visits Egypt once a year, along with Patricia and Youssef Aouyan, who are avidly continuing the work of Abdel Hakim Aouyan, who spent decades finding evidence of the existence of a highly technological culture that existed in Egypt thousands of years prior to the pharaohs. Brien has written numerous books on ancient history, and his expertise has been shared worldwide on TV and radio, with appearances on Ancient Aliens and Coast to Coast AM, among many other shows. In 2013, I was lucky enough to spend 2 weeks with Brien on a tour of Peru and Bolivia, and it is my great pleasure to welcome him to the Truth, Health, Freedom podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Alan. Thank you very much.
Now, I'd like to ask you, where and when did your fascination with ancient civilizations begin?
I would say from early childhood, growing up on the west coast of Canada, where there's very little culture except the native cultures, which of course I became fascinated with. I've always been interested in ancient places. My mother was very involved in studying history, and so she read me lots of bedtime stories about King Arthur and castles and Stonehenge and things like that. And so when I was 16, it's the first major trip I took, which was with a friend, and we went to England and spent 3 weeks traveling, just the two of us at 16, around England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. And I was blown away by all of the ancient structures that we were able to see. And even at that time, Stonehenge didn't even have a fence around it. You could just walk up to the stones. We got there in late afternoon and nobody was there. It was just amazing.
And how did that feel to be able to walk right up to those things that you'd probably only seen in books or on television? How was that inside of you?
Well, that's the amazing thing about seeing something in person is, like you say, you've seen photographs of something, but I remember also when we were in London and seeing St. Paul's in the background was like, oh, that's real. And but actually, the Salisbury Plain was fascinating because Stonehenge is so iconic, and again, there was no fence around it. We got there just as the sun set. We had to walk like 5 miles, I think, and it was surreal to actually be there.
And you mentioned sunset. Was it actually a sunny day, so you actually got to see the sunset and the shadow?
It was actually a sunny day in England, which was quite amazing. So yeah.
Unheard of. It was actually sunny last time I went to Stonehenge, but of course they wouldn't let me ride up there because things have changed. In some ways for the better because it preserves it, but in some ways we can't experience it in the same way. I think they open it on the solstice days, on the equinoxes. I can't remember which one, but I've seen photos of people who do get up there on 1 day a year or maybe 2 days a year. Great. Now you'd seen these sites. You're 16 years old. You've been enthused by the things you've seen and the things you want to see, the things you've heard about. But what were your early ambitions at that age, what were you going to do for a career?
Well, actually, quite soon after that, I did go to university, and I studied sciences with a major in biology, finished my degree, worked 6 months for the Canadian government, and then quit because it was so boring. And so I moved back to the island where my parents were living, and I took up my childhood passion of wood carving based on Native American work full time. And I did that for more than 10 years.
Okay, so from this island in Canada, what was the island called? Because I actually interviewed someone last Sunday who was on an island in Canada.
Oh, it's called Salt Spring.
Salt Spring, I'll mention that to him. Yeah, so you had, so you were doing this carving, Native American carving for 10 years, but then at some point you ended up in Peru. So what happened? What was the turning point?
Well, actually, I moved to. I wasn't really content with having a house and a mortgage, and that that felt like I was slowly dying. So I decided to break free, and I sold my house and almost all of my possessions, and I moved to Hawaii for 2 years and was involved in a Polynesian canoe building project. Then I moved back to Canada for a while, and one morning when I woke up, the word Peru came into my ears 4 times like a whisper, and I thought, "What's in Peru?" Oh, Machu Picchu's in Peru. So I just decided to visit Peru, and I was just in shock at the megalithic structures and the lack of much knowledge about them, the really stilted way that academia looks at this stuff. And so I took it on as my goal to unravel the mysteries of megalithic sites like that. And also that's when I stumbled across the elongated skulls too, which were, from a biological perspective, quite strange looking. So, and again, almost no literature about them. So that's why I'm living here today, is pursuing all of this.
How many years ago was that first visit to Peru?
I think it was 15.
So it's an interest that's never wavered. To this day, you're still just as interested, just as passionate about these things.
Oh yeah, yeah. People who haven't been to Peru have no idea how much ancient stuff there is here. It's so concentrated in this little country compared to the rest of South America, or actually the Americas. Of course, there's a lot of ancient stuff in Europe, but in the Americas, there's not that much. But Peru has it on the coast, in the highlands, in the jungle, in the Andes, etc. It's just almost unlimited.
So you'll probably never discover it all.
I hope not, because there always has to be something that's slightly out of reach.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah. Now, you've mentioned these elongated skulls and how there isn't much literature on them. So for the benefit of any of my listeners who have not heard of these elongated skulls, can you tell us what they are? Where are they found? What's so special about them? Okay,
well, actually, cranial deformation is a cultural practice that has been done on, I think, all continents except Antarctica, as far as we know, most commonly about 2,000 years. And it's where the nobility would bind the skull of a newborn baby in order to alter the shape, because that way, that's a physical distinction between the general public and the elite. So the most famous place where this was done actually is in Peru and Bolivia. Other examples, actually Stonehenge, they found elongated skulls there, and in Germany and Russia and the Congo, like all of Melanesia, all over the place, but the highest concentration seems to be in Peru.
Okay, and these are the ones you've just described are artificially elongated as a cultural tradition.
Right.
But I've looked at your videos. I've been to Peru with you, and I know that that's not the full story. So what else is there? Because this is where it gets quite amazing for those who haven't heard.
Oh, it does. It gets very interesting. Again, the literature says that all elongated skulls are the result of cranial deformation. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, 100%, that's it. It's a cultural practice. They wanted to make the children look different. But if you study as much as I have, especially the Paracas culture of the coast of Peru, which is where I'm located, you notice that there's a small percentage which don't appear to be artificial in design because they're larger than normal. There's a lack of this suture called the sagittal suture, which medical professionals can't explain. There are two small holes in the back of the skull, which are for nerve and blood flow. The eye sockets are larger. There are hundreds of mummies that are in storage at the main museum in Lima, and their height appears to be between 5'10" and 6'2", which is much taller than a typical Peruvian. They have natural dark red hair, which is not Native American. And so dark red hair is directly linked to light-colored skin and possibly green or blue eyes. So all of those characteristics make, especially the Paracas, very fascinating and not studied by any academics I know of.
And why do you think they're ignored? Because one thing that struck me when I was in Peru was these things aren't hidden. They're
right.
in plain sight. So why are people covering their eyes, or why academics covering their eyes and pretending they're not there? What do you think that's all about?
Well, it doesn't fit the paradigm that they've established, and they're very, they generally have a tendency of not wanting to change their belief system. It's the same in Egypt. There are many structures which are megalithic that could not have been made by the dynastic Egyptians. But again, academics will completely ignore any statements about that. So I think that's the main thing. Also, their lack of any proper testing of these skulls, which we have conducted. What I'm doing is I'm simply building up the database and the evidence greater and greater as time goes on. So I'm not bothering to get into discussion with academics about it. I'm simply building up the solid information about them.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of this information, you mentioned you've been testing these skulls. I know you were planning on getting some DNA testing. Have you had results from that? And what are the findings?
Yes, it's a process that's taken about 5 years because we had some initial testing done on 3 skulls, and the results were not what was to be expected, if I can put it that way. And so since that information went through the internet like wildfire, with lots of accusations of cheating or making up the results, etc., I contacted the Ministry of Culture of Peru and said, we would like to test DNA of the ancient Paracas skulls. We will finance everything. We will get the laboratories, and we will present you with the results before we make any announcements. Is that okay? The permission took 3 years, and the results came out, I think, 3 to 4 months ago. I sent the results to the head Peruvian archaeologist who was in charge of the study, technically, and his simple response back to me was, these are not what I expected. And from that, I could tell that he was probably not going to publish as regards to it. So I made a series of YouTube videos because this information belongs to the world, and so far more than 1 million views.
So have you had access to the information, or has this archaeologist kept it to himself because he doesn't want to publicize, or are you actually privy to what the findings are?
Well, we did it in a very savvy manner because there is a tendency of academics trying to hide information that they don't want to be released. Everything went through us. So again, we contacted the labs. We got permission from the Ministry of Culture to take the samples. So the samples were sent to 2 laboratories, one in Canada, one in the US. And then the results came to us. And then from us, the results went back to the Ministry of Culture. So even if they didn't like the results or tried to hide the information, we had it before they did. And so the basic story I can tell you is 100% of Native American people of South America, prior to the time of the Spanish conquest, and even to this day, because there's a high percentage of people in Peru are 100% Native people. The only haplogroups that should exist, which is your genetic ancestry, are A, B, C, and D. That's it. But the results that we got were the following: U2E1, U2E, H1 and H, K, H2A, J1B1, HR, and B4. So the only results that came back as Native American were the ones which are B4. All the rest of them can trace the ancestry back to Crimea and the Black Sea. So that is not something they want to discuss.
And that actually seems quite minor compared to the fact that they've got elongated skulls and seem to be a slightly different breed of human.
Right. Well, what we've also been able to find out through the process is this little book was written. Oops, right here. We published this little book immediately afterwards.
So it's the expert analysis DNA results for those who can't see.
Yeah, and we had a forensic person who did all of the sampling to make sure that there was no contamination. An archaeologist called Mondo Gonzalez, Dr. Michael Alday, who's a medical doctor, Dr. Malcolm Warren, who's a chiropractor, and Rick Woodward, who's an anthropologist. And what they noticed was that the foramen magnum, which is where your spinal column enters your skull, with us it's almost perfectly in the center, because that's the balance point that nature has created, so that our whole structure is in a balanced way. But in the elongated skulls, the foramen magnum is significantly back, as in 2 to 2.5 centimeters where it's supposed to be. So that's a genetic anomaly because of the shape of the skull. If you have an elongated skull that is slightly leaning back, nature would cause the foramen magnum to be back in order to balance it. So that proves it's not the result of binding, and that makes the Paracas a subspecies of human being at the minimum.
So the link to, is this book available from your website?
No, it's actually available through L.A. Marzulli. So, it's lamarzulli.net.
.net. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And the videos are available on the Brien Foerster YouTube channel, which is an amazing channel for those who haven't seen. Brien goes all over the world and films the most incredible things, the most incredible sights with insight from himself and from the people he works with, and from native traditions. And he also has what's the word for that drone? Yeah, you've got one of those drones that flies around, haven't you?
I've actually got 3 now, so it's yeah. Well, I like to use the term quadcopter because drone is more suggestive of dropping bombs on people in Afghanistan or something. But yeah, I've got 3. The technology is advancing so fast with those. So I have the standard big white one that people will know of, and then I've got a smaller collapsible one, and even this tiny one now, which literally is so small that it can fit in your pocket, and its arms fold out, and it's GPS controlled and everything. It's a phenomenal technology because it allows you to see an ancient structure from above, and you can create amazing cinematographic effects and stuff with it.
And you can see things that you can spot things that you wouldn't be able to spot from the ground.
Well, exactly. You can fly over trees and see a structure that's in the trees, or you can see what's on top of a mountain. So yeah, it's a phenomenal technology.
Wow. Now, just on the elongated skulls, because I'm going to move on to Egypt in a minute. You sent me some links of some recent videos in Egypt. One of them from the Cairo Museum showed it's like a bust of King Tut. And King Tut was portrayed with an elongated skull. So what do you think the significance of that is? And it's the same all around the world, that we find certain statues and certain carvings or portrayals, and they have elongated skulls. What's going on there?
Well, with Tut, he actually does have an elongated head. If you go into his tomb in the Valley of the Kings, you can see that his head is slightly distended backwards, not the way he's displayed in the art, though. And that was something that Akhenaten, who was either his father or his uncle, decided was important in the art of his time period. His daughters are all displayed with very elongated heads. Whether they had them or not, we don't know, because their mummies haven't been either released or found or whichever. But I think what Tutankhamun what Akhenaten was trying to say is that this is what our ancestors looked like. You know, I am from the royal bloodline, probably tracing back to Osiris, because Osiris is usually portrayed with having an very elongated hat, which I think is indicative of having an elongated head. So that's I think that's the basic story with the Egyptians of the Amarna period.
So even if they didn't have elongated skulls naturally themselves, what he's saying is, I still descend from this line.
Right. I descend from the divine.
Great. Wow. Now, Akhenaten, you mentioned there. One of your videos, I'm sure I heard you say that he is your favorite pharaoh. Why is that?
Well, he's actually the only one I'm interested in, because all of the others are about conquest and I'm so great and this, that, and the other. And Akhenaten was very rebellious because during his father's time, Amenhotep III, the priesthood, the Amen priesthood, had complete control over ancient Egypt. So they controlled politics, finance, and everything. And Amenhotep basically had nothing to do. And I think he was told, it's okay, Pharaoh, just relax. You don't have to do anything. We're taking care of it. And Akhenaten, who was Amenhotep IV, he was really pissed off about that, because he knew that they came from a divine bloodline. They were born to rule. And so he changed his name on purpose to Akhenaten, which means the shadow of Aten. And what he was trying to do is, he was very much an adept of the mystery schools of ancient Egypt. And unlike the other pharaohs, he wanted to portray that, and he wanted to bring back an ancient time period called the time of Aten, or the period of Aten, and that was the period of full-blown consciousness. Whereas Amen, actually, we use the term Amen, as in thy will be done, but if you trace it back to its root, it actually means let it remain hidden. So he wanted to move the culture out of this time of Amen, which was darkness and hiding information controlled by the priests, back into full-blown consciousness. And that's why he did such rebellious moves as establishing the capital city of Akhetaten away from Thebes, because Thebes was the center. And if he physically removed himself and his followers to that location, which turns out to be a megalithic site, then that meant that he was reigniting the concept of full-blown consciousness, opening up all the information of the past to the general public. And he was successful for maybe 10 to 15 years, but then the Amen priesthood decided it was time for him to go, so they murdered him and Nefertiti and the 6 daughters and took control back, and then used Tutankhamun as a puppet until he became tiresome, and then they probably knocked him off as well.
And what time period was this?
It's the 18th dynasty, so as far as I can remember, it's about 1500. I think it's around 1500 BC.
So it's, wow, thousands of years after the Cataclysm, the knowledge has been preserved by the select few, and he's trying to bring it back to the masses.
That's right, which is exactly what's going on right now in
Yeah.
our present day and age. Is those who think they have control are rapidly losing their power, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I've noticed a huge shift. Since I last saw you 4.5 years ago, I've noticed an enormous shift in many people, including myself. So it's exciting times to live in, I think.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned consciousness. That was my computer bleeping. You mentioned consciousness, and how he's trying to bring that full-blown consciousness to bear. Now, there are all sorts of incredible structures all over Peru, all over, as you mentioned, all over England, like Stonehenge, and especially, as we know, in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these structures seem to have been created for some kind of purpose, to do with vibration and how that might affect all sorts of things, including consciousness. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, the reason why we do our tour once a year, which next year will be in April with Patricia Awian Lehman, is that we cover basically cover all of ancient Egypt from the north to the south. So when you start in Giza, that's where you have the three massive pyramids, of course, as well as others. There are the two in Dashur, the red and the bent, and then other structures. And then you have Saqqara with these 100-ton stone boxes, underground boxes. So when you start there and you see that stuff, and that's supposed to be the beginning of the culture of the dynastic people, and then travel south all the way to Aswan, you notice that the structures become smaller and smaller as time goes on, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So in southern Egypt especially, aside from Karnak, almost everything is made from sandstone and limestone, which are materials the dynastic people could have worked with. But when you get to the megalithic stuff, that's where you're working in much harder stone, and that's why we think that those structures are far older than the dynastic people, including the Great Pyramid. Just its sheer scale. And then you get into, you obviously ignore the idea that these were constructed as tombs. So then you start to ponder, what would the function be? And that's where we get into vibration and resonance as being the reasoning behind their construction. There's a huge system of tunnels underneath the Giza Plateau that most people don't know about. And the pyramids are the external features of these energetic places. We believe that water was running underground from the Nile, setting up vibration, and that the pyramid's function was to amplify that vibration. My own personal theory is that it didn't have anything to do with electricity or energy in that way. It was more to set up an energetic field. So the obelisks, which also were not made by the dynastic people, were set up in strategic locations, and they were the receivers of the energy. Again, they're made of very hard granite stone, which is high in quartz content. Quartz is used in piezoelectricity and watches and computers and things like that. So we think it was a very advanced civilization that set up these energetic fields, mainly around the Giza Plateau, but extending as far as Karnak to the south, and also a very bizarre site called Tanis, which is in the Nile Delta, which is the most obvious example of an ancient cataclysm striking Egypt.
So this this electric field or energetic field, I'm not going to use the word electric, that's not quite right. This energetic field, would that be for the purposes of consciousness, or could it be for something else?
I think it was used for consciousness. I think whoever built them, they honestly, I don't think they felt comfortable in the environment that we find quite harmonious, which is this planet. And I think they built this energetic field in order to be able to access that which was not available to them. in the area. So I am implying ancient aliens at this point. The more I study Egypt, the more I have to personally believe that these constructions like that were not done by Atlanteans or anyone. I think they were from off-world people who, in order to be able to function properly, had to have this energetic field set up in order to access their highest state of consciousness.
And what does the oral history say about this? So I know you work with Yusuf Awian.
Mm-hmm.
What do the ancients say about this? Is the oral history passed down for thousands of years? How old is this work? Are these structures? And who and why were they built according to those traditions?
Well, the dynastic people go back to about 3100 BC, so that's about 5,000 years. And I think they entered the territory around 5,000 years ago and found these structures there in a state of damage, like catastrophic damage. So they inherited them. Also, we have evidence now that the hieroglyphic system is much older than the dynastic people, and that system was found by the dynastic people. The evidence we have of that is heat scorching of quite large blocks of stone that have hieroglyphics on them. So I think the hieroglyphic system was found and then reinterpreted. So there is a disconnect between whoever the great builders were and the dynastic people. So of course, ongoing trips will be in order to find more of the evidence of the catastrophic damage and access to sites that previously were prohibited. The greatest site we got to see this time in March was the Osiris Shaft, which has been off limits for decades, if not hundreds of years. And that is one of the true smoking guns. I could not believe it when the Ministry of Antiquities opened it up to the public. I think it was in November, because that is one of the most sought after places that was only accessible by the highest level of academia. And now you simply pay a fee and you have access to it. And I filmed in 4K hyper definition the entire experience. That's not on my YouTube channel yet, but it's coming up. I mean, that is truly from almost like a science fiction set. It's an incredible location.
So in what way is this a smoking gun? Because I've seen a few of your videos and places like the Serapeum, all sorts of things that seem just too incredible to have been done by human hand, even today,
Yeah.
let alone back then. So what is it about this Osiris Shaft that causes you to describe it as a smoking gun?
Well, the entrance is in the bedrock, pretty close to the two greatest pyramids. This metal door gets opened if you pay $2,000, and then you enter into you're entering into the limestone bedrock, and then you look down, and you go down a ladder 30 feet, and there's a chamber carved in the bedrock, which is approximately 20 feet by 30 feet in size. And then you continue to the end and you look down, and another ladder takes you down another 100 feet into the bedrock, into a chamber that actually is a chamber with 6 niches. And there are 2 giant sarcophagi that look like they've exploded in 2 of these niches. And then you look down again, and you see water, and you climb down another ladder about 40 feet, and that's where this massive box, I don't like to call them sarcophagi, they're just boxes. There's a box basically the size of the ones in the Serapeum at 100 tons, which is underwater. And, and so that's going almost 200 feet into the bedrock. Supposedly the box is too large to actually fit in the shaft to get back up again, which is impossible. So it's one of those things that there's, again, very little information about, and to be able to go there and experience it and film and photograph every second was my great joy.
Wow. So this box, I'm guessing it's not carved from the bedrock. It's a different kind of rock. Am I right there?
It's probably quartzite or granite. It's hard to tell. Yusuf was actually because the area is flooded with water. Yusuf took his shoes off and basically walked around on top of the box. But it was a pretty cramped area. There wasn't enough space for me to get my shoes off, and I just wanted to film it. I will go in next time, but he said it's very massive. He was walking around on the top of it. It's about top's about 2 feet underwater, so it extends down another number of feet. That's the first time he was ever in there too, and he of course was born across the street from the Sphinx. So I don't think many people have been in since November, again because it costs $2,000+ for a 2-hour visit. But if you go to Egypt with a group, that should be in the top 5 of your list of things to look at, because it's so surreal. And then the 2 boxes that literally look like dynamite blew them up, or at least cracked them really badly. It's a very surreal location. And the wonderful thing again is the fact that the new Minister of Antiquities decided to open it, because I thought it would be sealed off forever.
So it's not Zahi anymore.
No, thank God, because Zahi is the one who kept this kind of stuff under lock and key. And, who knows what they'll open up next. Supposedly, even Zahi supposedly admits that 85% of ancient Egypt is still underground. And I don't mean under the sand, I mean within the bedrock, like tunnels and shafts and who knows what.
So again, these shafts, the purpose of them, what do you think the purpose is? Is it to preserve something underground due to environmental things going on above? Or is it an energetic thing? Is it tapping into the Earth's energy in some way?
Yeah, I think it's focusing and amplifying the Earth's energy for beneficial purposes, either for consciousness or for healing, or for all of that. And they're climate control too. So the Serapeum is always about 20 degrees Celsius. It doesn't matter what time of year. It doesn't matter what time of day. It can be 105 outside, or not. Well, it can be 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside, but it's always 70 degrees or about 20 degrees Celsius inside there. So it seems like a climate control. And the giant boxes were not used for burial. I think they were used for re-energizing whoever it was that was building all of these complex structures.
And these boxes, for those who haven't seen, am I right in thinking they're too big to get in there? You couldn't envision how they would get into place. Is that right?
Yeah, they are. Let's see. Well, the box, on average, the box weighs 70 tons. The lid weighs 30 tons. The upper part of the box is about 7.5 feet high. So you need steps or something to be able to climb up and then jump on top and then get inside the box, which you can do. And the internal surfaces are perfectly flat and smooth. The corners are rounded as if done by a router of some kind, and the acoustics are just phenomenal. They react to the sound of Om. That's the only sound they like. If you hit Om, the whole box amplifies the sound.
And I take it you've laid down inside one of these.
Oh yeah, on multiple occasions.
And how does it feel? Apart from the resonance of the Om, do you get any feeling when you're there? Any unusual kind of feeling?
Well, it's like the vibration from Om goes right through your body. And that's the same with the box that's in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. Yusuf is the expert at tone. And so that's a basic practice we would do is we also rent the interior of the Great Pyramid for 2 hours just for our group. And that comes at a cost of I think it's $3,000 for that. And so you lie down in the box, and it's slightly bigger than human size. And then Yusuf will put his face inside the box, and then he will make the sound of Om, and the vibration goes right through you, and you were automatically in an alternate state of consciousness within 5 seconds.
And what's the longest period of time you've laid down in there? Because I've heard the story about Robert Schoch, and apparently he spent a whole night in there. Have you ever managed to do something like that?
No, we average about 5 minutes each, because normally there'll be a group of 40 people. And because the internal structure of the Great Pyramid is so massive, you have the subterranean chamber, the Queen's chamber, and the King's chamber. We want to experience all of it. But 5 minutes is very energizing. I've also heard that supposedly Napoleon spent the night by himself and came out almost half mad the next morning. So I don't know what happened to him.
But Schoch's still okay, isn't he? He's still got his marbles.
I'll be seeing him in June, so I hope so.
Now, Robert Schoch, I've got him written down here on another topic. You've mentioned the Cataclysm already, and some of your recent videos feature a solar plasma theory. So there seem to be a number of sites, megalithic sites and ancient sites in Egypt that seem to show some kind of cataclysmic damage, and the theory is that it was done by some kind of solar plasma energy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, Robert Schoch's theory is that there were eruptions of solar plasma from the sun about 12,000 years ago. And this caused the end of the last ice age, which, according to him, took place in less than 2 weeks. Like the melting of the vast amount of the ice sheet of the north, including North America, which was more or less covered in ice, that happened at a super rapid pace as the result of the solar plasma vaporizing the ice and then having it come down as rain. And that's when you get into the biblical flood of 40 days and 40 nights. Sea level rose by 100 meters very rapidly. That's the end of Atlantis, because the water rose and the Atlanteans had to depart. It's not that the continent sank. And then you have this incredible heat effect in certain locations in Egypt, like at Karnak, the Ramesseum, the Colossi of Memnon, and another location most people have probably never heard of, which is called Tanis, again, which is in the Nile Delta. That place is like from a science fiction set, because when it was discovered, most of the megalithic stonework was found underground. They actually dug it out. And that whole area, being the delta, is incredibly productive in terms of agriculture, except the mound where Tanis is does not sustain any life. There are I think, in 150 acres or so, 4 plants are growing. And that's it. The soil is the consistency of flour.
And even in that area, that's unusual, because I think of Egypt as this desert area where not much is growing. So
yeah, well, the Nile Delta is the heartland of agriculture for Egypt, and it's vast. But this site is located right there, and it's devoid of life. There are quartzite statues that have burn marks on the surfaces, melted surfaces. There are at least 10, if not 15, obelisks that were located there. All of them are broken into pieces, which could not have been done by vandalism. These things, the whole site blew up, basically. And I think that's the strongest case for the solar plasma theory. As well, I was just in the highlands of Peru 4 days ago. There's a site called Vilcashuaman, which is a megalithic location, and parts of the wall are melted, which requires at least 2,000 degrees Celsius.
Wow, that's incredible. And they couldn't have done that with fire, these so-called primitive people. I like some of your videos which you're showing these incredible things such as the 1,200-ton obelisk, and then you're showing the tools and the methods that the conventional archaeologists say were used to mine this stone, and it's quite comical. So that's something I wanted to ask you as well. These 1,200-ton unfinished obelisk. There are statues, 1,000 tons, one of them with a 500-ton base. The Colossi of Memnon that you mentioned, one of them is just one piece and it's 720 tons. How do you think people moved, aliens, whoever, moved these things? And again, why would they make something from one piece of stone and get that stone from hundreds of kilometers away? What's happening there?
Well, it had to have been, I think, the neutralization of gravity. It's the only explanation. The reason why they built on that scale is because they could. It's the Colossi. That's something, again, you've seen photographs of from National Geographic or from childhood. But when you're actually there looking at it, and you find, again, that's why it's great to have a geologist with you, and Susan Moore from Canada is the one we will use forever because she's so open, but she's so scientific. She will not make any claim until she's thoroughly thought about what it is that she's looking at. But both colossi were intact at one point. The one on the right, which is multiple pieces, was the Romans attempted to repair it, and they did a really bad job. But the stone itself is quartzite, which is 7 out of 10 on the hardness scale, with 10 being diamond. And the quarry is 700 kilometers away, I think. So how else could something of that scale have been moved? People, of course, will say, well, they built boats or barges, but out of what material? Because the only trees that really grow in Egypt are date palms, and you're not going to be building a boat out of date palm because it's like making something out of foam, like styrofoam almost. It doesn't have strength to it, and it would require the entire forest of cedars in Lebanon to be able to build something of any scale. But then you have to move the wood 1,000 kilometers to Egypt in order to be able to build the boat. It's just, I think the only explanation is anti-gravity or the neutralization of gravity, utilizing the nature of the stone itself, like the quartz properties, possibly.
And even the conventional explanation is utterly remarkable and shows an utterly incredible sophistication and organization and technological utilization. So either way, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention Susan Moore. She's in one of these videos, one of your recent ones about Egypt. Mm-hmm. And you have a number of tours this year and next year. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about where you're going next and where you're planning to go over the next year, and where can people join you? Because you don't just go on your own, people can join you.
Yeah.
Experience for themselves.
Well, at the end of this month, we're going to California to an event called Contact in the Desert, which of course sounds like it's all about aliens. A lot of it is, but not 100%. Robert Schoch will be there, who is, I don't think he's too much into the alien thing itself, but he's a geologist, a number of other speakers from different fields. They're trying to make it more diversified, because if it's all about aliens, that only attracts a certain group of people. Then in June, we have our yearly celebration of what's called the Inti Raymi, which is the Inca celebration of the sun, because the renewance and cultural pride of the Peruvian people is growing wonderfully. And so the Inti Raymi attracts 200,000 people to Cusco. It's absolutely amazing. And then in August, we have our annual Elongated Skulls tour. September, I'm going to be in England to a UFO conference in West Yorkshire.
That's not too far away. I hope.
Really?
I hope that I'm free that weekend because I'd love to come and see you. It's not
No,
far at all.
that'd be great. I love Yorkshire. It's beautiful. And then October we have our annual Lost Ancient High Technology tour, which is Cusco, the Sacred Valley, Machu Picchu, Tiwanaku, and Pumapunku in Bolivia, and other locations. The wonderful thing is all three of those tours are already sold out, which is great. People are already starting to sign up for 2019, but we are actually limiting the number of guests because we'd like to keep the number relatively small so that I get good interaction with everybody. I don't want to end the tour without having properly met all the people, which, so we're not really doing it that much as a financial thing. It's more of an experiential, high quality thing. Then in January, we're going to India with Susan Moore and Patricia Awian, because there are a lot of megalithic sites in India that are not explainable by conventional stories. But if you get into the oral tradition of India, then it becomes very interesting. And then February, we're doing megalithic Mexico, because Mexico has megalithic sites that were not made by the Aztec or Olmec or Maya. And then April, it's back to Egypt again.
Now, India, I wanted to pick up on India because I thought of India before when you were talking about the solar plasma theory and the melted rock. And I remember seeing on Ancient Aliens, Mohenjo-Daro.
Oh, right.
To be that same kind of phenomenon seems to have happened over there. Will you be visiting Mohenjo-Daro?
No, unfortunately, I think Mohenjo-Daro is in Pakistan. But we're going to places like the Elephanta and Ellora caves, carved in bedrock, massive scale, could not have been done with hand tools. Of course, one of my focuses will be on looking for the actual tool marks, because that's always intriguing, which is what blew me away about going to Petra in Jordan. Petra's just off the charts. I had no idea it was so big. But yeah, that's my main emphasis. So we'll see how this tour of India goes. But again, what it is trying to unravel the actual history from a scientific perspective, but also from the oral traditions of the area. So yeah, that'll be fabulous. And the food will be great, of course.
Of course, yeah. And you mentioned the oral traditions of the people of the area. That's something that I appreciated when I went on your tour in 2013, that you do work with the local people. And when you mentioned Mexico there and how these megalithic sites were not built by the Aztecs, for example. And I remember you saying that the people themselves, whether it be the Inca or the Aymara, whoever, they say, we did not build these things. These were built by someone else. And we just came here and we used the site and we built on top of the site. And I think that's really important to recognize, and really important for people to know that, I think that's what's different about your tours, is you're not just open-minded to the telltale technology marks, like the marks of a power tool or a power saw or something like that. You're also open to the oral traditions, and you take that into account, which I really appreciated. So thank you for that.
Well, what we try to do is very much a balanced left brain, right brain approach, like a holistic approach. So it's using science, but it's also using intuition, dowsing, and local experts. In the beginning, in order to attract attention, of course, would bring famous authors like Graham Hancock and people like that. But we've decided from now on, it's only the local knowledge which is important. So we have the most fabulous people that we're working with now. We have Wilco, who is our healer in Cusco, who's...
wait there a second. Wait there, Brian.
Okay.
There you go.
Ah! Oh, very good.
Put my ears back in. For those who can't see, I've just grabbed my necklace that was made by Wilco that he gave us as we arrived in Cusco back in 2013, and it's still there hanging above my bed, and I do wear it from time to time.
That's great. Yeah, Wilco is comes from a line of healers and oral tradition experts dating back to the time of the Inca. Of course, the Spanish conquistadors were very nasty to the Inca people, and so all of their knowledge to be preserved went, quote unquote, underground, in that those of knowledge would quietly pass it on, usually from grandfather or grandmother to grandson and granddaughter. And that's the case of Wilco. A lot of the ceremonial artifacts or things that he uses come from his grandfather. So he's the first generation in 500 years that can openly speak about the Inca and related cultures. So again, that's the resurgence going on. We also have Teo Paredes, who is a PhD in anthropology. He very may well have Inca ancestry, but his family's lived in Cusco for centuries, and his knowledge level is mind-boggling. He's an expert on the ancient plants that the Inca cultivated, of which there were 5,000 kinds of potatoes, for example. So what he's doing is he's, again, bringing all that back. He goes to villages and finds rare strains of things like quinoa, and then he takes that to other villages and related seeds and says, you should grow this because there is a market for it. And in combining economics with cultural care, it's bringing all this tradition back. And his knowledge level is mind-boggling. I'm a young boy compared to him in terms of knowledge, but he's on every tour that we do. Wilco's on every tour of these tours we do. Then we have Antonio Portugal in La Paz, who's an expert on Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. They've even done ground penetrating radar there with him. So his knowledge base is amazing. Our tour coordinator is Gustavo Morales, who is an excellent coordinator and guide. And then our latest is Stephanie, who is a direct Inca descendant, and she's the expert of Lake Titicaca. She's 25 years old. Her knowledge level is just mind-shattering, just incredible. So that's our group now, and it is, in that way, it's very unique in that I speak less and I learn more because I like to have them talk. I'll talk about the technology part, but when it comes to local knowledge, it's like it's theirs.
I'll have to get them on the podcast.
Oh yeah, all of them
amazing.
speak. Well, all of them except Wilco speak English very well.
Even
Stephanie's.
I could have a chat with Wilco.
Yeah, he's actually getting better. He's studying English hard because I told him the more English you learn, the more diversified your groups will be. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Yeah, I know, that's good." He wants to help as many people as possible. So, yeah, I could easily carry on a conversation with him now. Whereas earlier on he was quite shy, but now he's coming out of his shell a lot more, which is fantastic. Super.
Wonderful. Now, you mentioned the Inti Raymi celebrations, the cultural pride that's growing, all these the native knowledge that you're using on your tours.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you a question I've written down here. How can the knowledge of ancient high technology, culture, and wisdom help humanity today and tomorrow to steer this world in a better direction? What can we learn from these traditions and these people?
Well, in terms of the technology, that's what a lot of people are pursuing right now. They're looking at 0-point energy. They're looking at free energy, and I think that's what these things used to do. So that, I think, is bringing what had been invented in the past back to life again, because all of these structures seem to function in a very harmonious way. They didn't use gasoline or natural gas or anything. It was the vibration of the earth that produced the energy. So that's perfectly in harmony with the planet. And that's why the proportions had to be based on sacred geometry. The height of the Great Pyramid is 1% of the diameter of the earth and all this kind of thing. It had to function in harmony with the planet. And I think that's our only survivable future is to go back into that kind of tradition of working with our planet and nurturing her rather than wrecking the hell out of her with our very primitive forms our primitive forms of technology. Everything's very destructive that we do. Like to produce electricity, we have to dam a river, which destroys the ecosystem of the river, etc. In terms of the ancient traditions, these are basically universal principles, which is what's wonderful. A lot of the ancient cultures understood the exact same things, tweaked to their environment. So that's something that Wilco does. Whenever we start a tour, the first thing that happens is he does a ceremony, and that is a grounding ceremony to say it doesn't matter where in the world you've come from, it doesn't matter what language you speak, it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. We've all come for a common purpose with slight variation depending upon your personal wishes, but we've come to learn. You are respectful in the way that you've come, and therefore the energetic doors are now open to you to pursue what it is that you wish to take with you back to be a better person and to teach others. And that's basically what we're doing. And also in terms of healing as well, everything is done with natural products which are grown in Peru based on Inca and older traditions. So yeah, it's a renaissance of good principles from the past that must be nurtured and enhanced and brought back for the better good of humanity. And that's a wonderful thing. You see more and more of that, of indigenous wisdom keepers opening up to the world, like not just to their people, but to the world. Whoever has come to pursue the knowledge will be taught the knowledge if they're deemed to have come in a good way. And then they take it with them, and then they expand it, and all of these wonderful things from the past return.
And yeah, you might even see some of that when you come to England. That the knowledge that I've seen, and especially in the last couple of years around here, that's coming from native traditions. I'm actually going to meet with some native Mexicans, Maracames, in a couple of weeks' time. Can't wait for that. And they're coming to Manchester. So
wow,
it's going global, and it's wonderful. Like you say, it's a renaissance, it's a rediscovery, it's a reemergence of these old traditions. My next question for you is, what have you yourself learned from these traditions and these people, especially in Peru where you live, and how has that influenced your way of thinking and your life?
Well, being from the outside world has allowed me to look at things from a scientific perspective. And so that's why I'm able on some level to decode some of this ancient, especially the stonework, because I have a very scientific mind. So it's like, this could not have been done with bronze tools, so how was it done? And then, of course, over time you meet local people like Wilco, who tells you stories from the past, and the same with Teo and others. And more, all of these people have been opening up to me because they see that I'm here from a heart perspective. Living in a different environment like this can be very challenging, but it's much more exciting than living in an area that you're used to, or especially that you were born and grew up in. That's a convenience to do that. It's a great challenge to move a third of the way across the planet. But at this point, I am a Peruvian. I don't really relate to North America much anymore. I'm learning to be more respectful of my European genetic heritage, though, which is great. I did break down crying when I went to Stonehenge the last time, because I suddenly felt that I'd been studying other people and not my own ancestors. And so that was like a subconscious emotional reaction to awakening to my own heritage, which was wonderful. Yeah.
And where's your heritage from? I always notice this about North American people. They always seem to know where the parents, grandparents, great grandparents lived.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's for those interested, it is kind of important because when you grow up in North America, or at least in Canada or the US, you are from somewhere else. And being connected with your genetic heritage gives a part of a sense of being, I think. So I'm part Scottish, English, Irish, French, German, and Native American from the east coast of Canada. So a reasonable blend.
Yeah, a real mix there. Now,
but
coming towards... Oh, sorry. Carry on.
I plan to have my DNA tested, though, because I'd love to see what that is. I'd love to see if there's some... What's that?
By the same lab that's doing the elongated skulls.
Oh, easily. Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Actually, that will be a prerequisite because I'm planning on doing more DNA testing, but I'm going to do it myself. I'm not directly with the labs. It was an association that got involved in the major testing, and it cost $100,000 and took 3 years. So I'm going to do it on a much smaller scale, like one individual at a time. I might fund the whole thing myself, but a prerequisite of that will be I will have to submit my DNA in order to make sure that I haven't contaminated the sample. So I'll get it that way.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. Now we'll come towards the end of the hour. So I've just got a couple of very quick questions. If you could go back and advise the young Brien Foerster, say that 16-year-old young man who came to England and went to Stonehenge, what, if anything, would you say to him?
You're doing the right thing. I've always followed my heart. I've done the most unconventional stuff that drove my family insane. But it's now that I look back on it, it is an obvious path to where I am now. I could not be happier with my choice. You know, everyone makes mistakes, but I could not be happier with my present situation. And I came to this world to do this, and that gives me an incredible sense of contentment.
So you found your purpose and your path, and you're living it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Now, the one last talk, that's my final question. If you could have one last talk, it's the last time you can give an interview, it's the last time you can give a lecture, presentation, speech, what would you say? What would your message for the world be?
We've been lied to through the education system and through governmental systems as to the greatness of who we are and the greatness of where we came from. And as the old systems start to collapse, such as the banking system, some organized religion, government as we know it, and history as we've been taught, we are entering a very rapid phase of growth, of self-empowerment, and hopefully the unity of humanity. And that's a wonderful thing because we have little time in order to be able to be on this planet and little time to save our planet from what is being done to it. And so I think we stand a good chance of surviving and thriving by remembering where we came from.
That just gave me goosebumps. Really,
oh, good.
Really inspiring, positive message. I'm so pleased you said that. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to share just before we finish?
No, it's a pleasure to have been with you. I hope we can do this again. And my role in life is to learn and disseminate knowledge that I encounter. I do not own any of it whatsoever. And that's why 90% plus of what I do is free information. The 10% is so that I can afford to do what I do, but most of my time is spent giving what I've learned away, and that's where YouTube, especially, writing books is a great thing, but that's where YouTube is phenomenal because you have global access and it costs the viewer nothing, which is great.
And I'm really grateful for it. It's changed my life. YouTube's changed my life. Your channel, others as well. It's absolutely a wonderful resource, and it's brilliant, and it's great that you're making the most of it. So your website is hiddenincatours.com, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And the YouTube channel is the Brien Foerster YouTube channel.
Right.
And I will be posting all the links below. So if anyone would like to learn more from the YouTube channel, from the website, order any books, go on any tours, then they can do that. Once again, thank you very, very much, Brien Foerster, for your time. Please send my love to Irene. Have I pronounced it correctly? I always forget the pronunciation.
No, well, Irene is the Spanish way, but you came very, very close, and she'll very much appreciate that you got in contact with me, because she remembers everybody who was, especially those who are lovely people, who are most of them who've been on the tours. You get the odd one that you never want to see again, but she automatically said, there's a message from Alan the singer from England. Oh, really? And he would like to interview you. So we always remember those that we have encountered and had positive experiences with, and you're definitely one of the top of the list. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And I really hope one day that I'll see you again. It might be in September in West Yorkshire. If not,
hopefully,
who knows, one day on one of your tours, it'd be great to meet again. And maybe before then, we'll do this again, and you can share with us your latest discoveries, explorations, adventures. So thank you very much.
Okay, please come to Egypt with us.
I would love to. It's an ambition. It's on the bucket list.
Okay, great, great.